Welcome everyone to this month's View from the Mount. We're broadcasting from Meditation Mount in the Ojai Valley where it is very hot. And I know that some of you are also in areas that are under this extreme heat, so I hope that you are all staying cool on all levels. So welcome to this time together. Our theme today is birthing the inner child of light. And during our time together, we will be exploring this intimate topic through the lens of the ageless wisdom teaching. And then we'll engage in periods of contemplation and meditation that will enable us to have a new understanding, hopefully to quietly and powerfully allow this understanding, these insights to come alive inside of us. So today will be paced differently. We will go at a slower pace, although faster than slower relative terms, a pace that suits that which we seek to do, which is to enter into the mystery itself, not just talk about it, but to enter into the mystery of what does it mean to give birth. So we will allow for these adequate periods of reflection and assimilation. So I invite us to begin our journey with a time of alignment so that all of us on this call can center ourselves, and we can prepare our group field so that it becomes highly sensitive to impressions from the deeper dimensions of the planetary being itself, as well as from our own essential nature. So let's just pause and affirm that I am here now. I am here now, fully present to myself and to all that is happening around me. We are present here and now. We are present here and now. And as our many hearts are woven together by strands of love, we form this matrix, this field of impression that can receive and register new insights. Insights that have never been born before inside of us. We do this through our intention and through this subtle field of receptivity that we call the field of impression. And this field of impression is the group heart. So let's begin. We'll be going from big macrocosmic views to microcosmic views and back out again, back in again, because the whole idea is to connect that which is macrocosmic and that which is microcosmic, because somehow we as humanity are this bridge between the macrocosm and the microcosm. And we're focusing on the mystery of birth. And during this month of July, we are actually being influenced by the energies that are flowing through the constellation of Cancer. And Cancer is where birth takes place. Birth takes place inside its fluid and feeling waters. So Cancer is actually connected with the law of rebirth. And it's said to be one of the gateways of life into the denser level of material existence. In fact, this year we have 2 full moons occurring in the solar sign Cancer. And so in a couple of weeks, we will have a blue moon. The blue moon is the second moon that happens in the same sign. So it really means that the whole birthing impulse is heightened this year. And so it's a great time for us to enter into this theme together. So each sign of the zodiac, we've just talked about Cancer, each sign of the zodiac carries and transmits a special quality of light. And for the constellation of Cancer, the light is given the name, the light within the form. The light within the form. And that really is a way of summing up what birth is bringing light into the form when we incarnate. And the spiritual motto of Cancer further amplifies. It says, I build a lighted house and therein dwell. It's all about bringing the light of the Spirit into earth, creating an earthly place where the light can be housed. So let's ask ourselves a question. What does it mean to build a lighted house? So individually, I see it as the applied spiritual work of building the temple of self, incarnation by incarnation, so that eventually we have created a space in which the sacred fire of the Spirit, the fire of the soul, can reside. And we're told in the Ageless Wisdom teaching that the true work of Freemasonry is the building of this sacred temple. So Freemasonry, in its purest form, is the architectural practice of building the temple of self, giving birth to our own inner reality by creating an outer space in which it can appear. It's important that each of us do this work. Nobody else can build our temple of self. It's up to us to do it. And as we work on our own individual lighted houses, as we fashion them into these places where the light can live, we join with others and our communities become lighted places. And you can see as these lighted places begin to join together, we create microclimates of kindness, caring, and sharing. And then together, they form this network of light. We could say that the great work or the magnum opus of our time is the building of the temple of the new humanity. A heart-lighted house in which our one human family can reside and flourish and fulfill its destined role as the light bringer and the living bridge between heaven and earth, between the macrocosm and the microcosm. So let me just say one more thing about Cancer, because there's an ancient correlation to Cancer that has to do with the process of birth. Once again, the Ageless Wisdom teaching says that over 18 million years ago, humankind was born in the age of Cancer. We are entering now in the age of Aquarius, but the actual birth was in the age of Cancer, 18 million years ago. And by birth, I'm referring to that momentous evolutionary event which occurred when the fire of the self-reflective mental faculty was sparked within the animal human form. And for the first time, all these aspects of the one light, spirit, soul, and matter, they now live together inside one conscious incarnated package. So that's the mystery, it's said, of humanity, that we contain within us everything. And it's up to us to reveal the one through our own incarnated aspect. And this is reflected in the scriptures when it says that we're made in the image and likeness of the Creator. So if this is true, then it assumes that inside each one of us there burns an eternal flame, a flame that is an aspect of the original fire of creation. So, if this is true, we could consider ourselves to be fractals of the one life. We are constellations of sentient holographic entities that contain the eternal promise and potential of the Creator. And we're tasked with expressing this inner reality. So we're going to take some time throughout this session just to stop and pause and allow these things to sink in. Once again, I have to put in my disclaimer, don't believe a word I say unless it resonates in your heart, or if you're willing to accept it as a working hypothesis and test it out yourselves. What I'm offering is what I've come across in the Ageless Wisdom teachings, what I have internalized myself, my own ahas. And yet, as we know, the true birth is when we each have our own aha moment. So let's go back to the fractal that is you and I. Think of it this way. Each fractal is a universe of self. It's our inner community of lives. And these lives look to us, the awakened consciousness, the soul, as a steward who will act wisely as their guardian and guide. So we are really learning what it means to be creators and gods. We're given domain over a particular aspect of life called the universe of self. So this is how I see it. I see this multidimensional ecosystem of self as our primary sphere of responsibility. It's up to us to build the temple. It's up to us to take care of our own universe of self. And as we do this, as we learn to create health and wholeness through this personal universe, we grow the sensitivity, the care, and the capacity to become stewards of a greater sphere of life together, namely the planet Earth. So the ecological movements has deep spiritual roots and implications. So let me put forward one other thing to ponder on. My sense is that for the one life to know itself, it needs to meet and touch itself and to sense the quality and substance of its own being firsthand, which means it can't remain as the one. It has to enter into the many. So for the one to become self-aware, the original word of creation needs to be made flesh. It needs to enter into the magnificent mundane drama being acted out on the stage of incarnation. And that word itself, incarnation, really means making flesh. Incarnate, to be made flesh. So the idea is the word to be made flesh, and each incarnation, each taking on of flesh and substance, is our opportunity to fashion something on earth that is a suitable dwelling place for the light and the love and the truth that lives at the heart of all things. So it goes back to building the temple of self. And as you're familiar with, if you've been a part of other broadcasts from Meditation Mount, one of the guiding principles at the core of our work here is the principle of essential divinity. It really affirms what we've just talked about, that as creatures born of the Creator, our sovereign self is a unique revelation of the one life. We are sparks of the Creator dwelling inside our own microcosmic aspect of creation. Once again, we're going to have these macro thoughts and then bring them into a very microcosmic personal understanding. So let's turn to the ancient texts to go further into this. If you take this particular passage from the Bhagavad Gita, it illustrates what we've just talked about, the fractal. You're probably familiar with this phrase. Having pervaded the universe with a fragment of myself, yet I remain. So having pervaded the universe with a fragment of myself, I'm in everything, I still am. I remain as the one. Now, in Christian terms, Christian mysticism talks about God immanent and God transcendent. So God transcendent would be, yet I remain, I'm everywhere, I'm all things, I'm omnipresent, I'm omnipotent. God immanent, I-M-M-A-N-E-N-T, immanent, is the God anchored inside each particle of creation as the fractal. And then it's the calling forth of that light. So the birth of the inner child of light is the calling forth of that which the one has placed inside the many aspects of itself. So let's pause again and just take a few moments to allow this fact, if you like, to be registered, because it's profound as we understand, my God, I am an aspect of life. I've been tasked with giving birth in this microcosmic world, the light that lives at the heart of the macrocosm. Sort of breathe it in and let it sort of circulate through your being. And we'll be doing this several times during our session today, just taking times to digest this, because I don't want them just to be big mental concepts. They need to be internalized, brought into the substance of our being, incarnated. So for me, the big aha is that if each of us is a creature born of the Creator, then the one life lives and pulses inside my heart, inside every atom of my being, as an inextinguishable, fiery promise. I mean, that's what it means. So I believe that each of us are part of this great generative mystery that's constantly seeking to manifest itself on the outside and inwardly realize itself through a process of, as we said before, the one becoming the many, and then the fragmented one experiencing a synthetic return from the many into a realized knowing and remembering of oneness. We do this on a personal level when we go out and we live different aspects of ourselves, and we realize that, well, who am I? And we start to go through this synthetic process of bringing ourselves back into wholeness, integrating ourselves. So once we've integrated our own personal lives, it's really the one coming back to its state. Now imagine that at the meta level. So once again, a question. How does waking up each day with this inner knowing change the way we now relate to life? So our topic today is the birth of the inner child of light, and it's probably best to begin by delving into the mystery by which birth takes place on earth. It's pretty straightforward. We know it in the human form, but let's have a look at the, if you like, the spiritual process that's put forward in the Ageless Wisdom teachings. It's said that inside of each one of us, there lives a creative force, and this creative force is composed of the Divine Father and the Divine Mother. So inside each one of us, there resides this twin, the Divine Father, the Divine Mother. And for the sake of clarity, let me state now that the teaching describes the masculine and feminine poles as forming the inner spiritual circuitry that is present in each human being. How we then identify ourselves in our own lives with a specific gender or sexual orientation, and how we choose to express this outwardly in our daily lives is our choice, and it in no way changes the inner reality. So no matter how we each see ourselves and choose to show up on the outside, the teaching says it does not negate the reality of the inner configuration of the divine feminine and masculine. We just have the choice of how we express that on the outside. So let's take a few moments to sense the macrocosmic reality of the one life living inside us as a microcosmic expression of itself. Can we accept and can we embrace the fact that the Divine Mother and the Divine Father live inside of us? So these two poles and two presences represent the twin aspects of a unified field. And if you go back to the Agni Yoga teaching, it's called the cosmic magnet. And the cosmic magnet, because a magnet has two poles, the cosmic magnet is referred to as the dual origin. So the dual origin is really how the one recreates itself in time and space and matter. The one manifests itself through its dual nature, the masculine and feminine. So these two create a third point, the three. And the third point is the lighted offspring of their sacred communion, which is what we are talking about today and exploring, which is the inner child of light. So the consummation of the marriage, the inner marriage between the spiritual pole of the divine feminine, divine masculine, results in the birth of this lighted child of their communion. I don't want to go too much into this so that it becomes too mental, but I often think of this child, this offspring, it's a child of consciousness. And that's what it says that the child is. So we know that when a masculine and feminine form come together on earth, a child is created. When spirit and matter come together, consciousness is created. For instance, the fact that you are watching a screen that has light. Light is created because of the differential field and the creative tension between the two poles, the positive and negative pole, and that creates light. In the same way, the interaction of the positive and negative, the divine feminine and divine masculine, creates the light of consciousness. And the continual expansion of the light of consciousness is the evolutionary journey of humankind. It's the growing awareness until we reach a point where we become aware of a greater state of being and we enter into, as the Buddha did, a state of samadhi, nirvana. So everything is a progressive entry into a greater state of being and knowing. So we're really part of this amazing, awesome process whereby the one becomes aware of itself and becomes self-realized. So let's go back to looking at ourselves not as just random elements born on earth. What if you and I are intimate and integral partners in a cosmic dance and part of this awesome process of revelation, where life is inviting and asking us to give birth to life? So once again, let's take a few moments to allow this to be sensed and to sink in. And then I'd like us to enter a time of group meditation and deep reflection on the divine marriage and the birth of the inner child. So let's begin our meditative journey by bringing ourselves to a point of inner stillness. Take a few deep, gentle breaths, releasing any tension you may be holding in your physical body. Just let it melt away as you breathe it out. Now do the same for your emotional body, allowing any feelings that may be swirling and causing waves and ripples inside you to subside, to become calm. Allow your feelings to be like a calm lake. Continuing to breathe deeply and gently, we release any extraneous thoughts that may be filling our mind. We allow the breath to clear the mind so that it is serene and receptive. And to complete this inner alignment of our group field, let us now stand inside the heart. The heart is the heart of our fractal, our ecosystem, our universe of self. And at its center, the fire of love burns. And this fire of love is a spark of the eternal flame. And we connect with each other, heart to heart to heart, strengthening the matrix of coherence, this field of communion and community that we began to weave at the beginning of our session. I'll briefly describe what we're going to do together now. We'll be inviting and invoking the presence of the Divine Feminine, which I will call the Ancient Mother, and the Divine Masculine, which I will call the Ancient Father. And I will speak some words for us to ponder on, and then sound the Tibetan bowl. And when you hear the Tibetan bowl, it's a time to allow this to sink in beyond the mind, to be registered in the heart, and to reveal itself inside the silence. So let's begin our journey. Inside the silent space of our loving group heart, we invite and invoke the presence of the Eternal Father and the Eternal Mother, and we feel these twin aspects of creation alive in us as a pulsing reality. We begin by calling upon the Ancient Father, the Divine Masculine Principle, and imagine hearing its voice declare, I am the Ancient Father, the seed bearer of fiery hope. I carry the flame of eternal love from the heart of the cosmos into the time-bound fields of terrestrial existence. I am the inexhaustible and inextinguishable fire of spirit. I am the eternal flame of life, the omnipresent fire of the heavens. I am infinite, omnipotent. There is no place which knows me not. And I have stood watch over this earth garden through countless eons, ensuring that the seed of love may enter, be germinated, and be quickened. My presence guarantees that through the many seasons of your striving, that light and beauty and love will eventually flower on earth. My promise is that earth will be a garden of great beauty as the fire of the Ancient Father is kindled inside you. In the silence of the heart, let my words sink fully into your cells, impregnate the atoms of your being, and register in your blood and bones as a deep knowing and remembrance of your true origin and identity. We now call upon the Ancient Mother, the Divine Feminine Principle, and allow her presence to come alive in our heart, hearing her timeless message speaking to us. I am the Divine Mother who has gently held you in the arms of unconditional love long before the beginning of time. I am limitless in my caring for all creation, for I am the fecund field, the fertile womb out of which the promise of life is born. I receive the cosmic seed and place it in the warm, dark, nourishing embrace of my being. Nothing can be revealed and nothing can be born or reborn unless it enters through me. I stand ever expectant as the earthly portal of revelation. Know that I am always with you. In the silence of the heart, let my words sink fully into your cells, impregnate the atoms of your being, and register in your blood and bones as a deep knowing and remembrance of your origin and your identity. We now bring these two aspects of the Father and the Mother into a sacred place of communion inside our heart. We see and feel them meet and meld in a field of limitless love and joy. This is the longed-for inner marriage, the joining together in holy matrimony of the twin aspects of our essential nature. Celebrate this moment of union and of reunion of your eternal self in the silence of your heart. And still standing in the silent space of the heart, let's realize what's just occurred. Let's see and sense the fruits of this divine relationship and become aware that out of their union, a child has been born inside us. This is the child of light and love. This is the revelation of our essential nature in time and space. This child is the coming one. This child is the becoming one, revealed through our individual lives. So be with this child of light for a moment. Celebrate the birth that is seeking to occur within you, that is occurring within you. And in the silence of the heart, let the reality of this inner birth sink fully into your cells, impregnate the atoms of your being, and register in your blood and bones as a deep knowing of your true identity. So that was the experience of intentionally invoking and having that marriage take place. That for me is what we're called to do, is to have right relationship between the divine feminine and the divine masculine inside of us, inside of our communities, inside of our one humanity. Because whenever these aspects of our essential nature are separated, the world suffers. Coherence dissolves, and love and goodness cease to flow and circulate around the great chain of being. whenever the Divine Mother and the Divine Father are separated in our consciousness, our world can descend into despair, into chaos. And then as this is multiplied by all humans, we descend into war and strife. However, the good news is when the two live in deep communion and sacred union with each other inside us, it guarantees that the wholeness and beauty of life in all its manifold forms will be revealed, and that life will continue to regenerate generation by generation. So I realize that we attempted to do in a very short period of time what the whole of creation is attempting to do each moment. For me, it's important that we take these times to allow it to register, because even though we may not comprehend everything, just the fact that we've invited these two parts of ourselves to come together and become whole, ask and you shall receive, knock and the door shall be open, just the fact of intentionally putting that out means that internally something is shifting. If we truly intend that to happen, then it will happen. So another way of giving birth, if something wishes to externalize, i.e. to manifest its inner characteristics and qualities on the outside, we realize, particularly we've seen this in the creative meditation process, that it must first reach a potent point of internal magnetization. It's what happens when moisture builds up into a cloud and the cloud reaches a point of precipitation, and then it starts to rain. It didn't rain out of nothing. There was a buildup of moisture until it reached that point of precipitation. So the precipitation of this internalized and embodied inner reality really is the externalization of who we are. This is our version of revelation. And I was thinking about this recently and hearkening back to the very little I remember as a schoolboy from my time in the chemistry lab. We did a lot of experiments, and one that really stuck in my mind was when we were working with the notion of supersaturated solutions. So what I was thinking of is perhaps we could postulate that when our lives become a supersaturated solution of loving kindness, then a crystal of cosmic love is precipitated into the world. Just as I experienced a crystal precipitated when the solution became supersaturated, just like the rain cloud. And Patanjali talks about the rain cloud of knowable things. It reaches a point where it just rains knowledge. It's what the Agni Yoga teachings call straight knowledge. So let me offer another and very different analogy. We've just looked at the rain cloud. We just looked at supersaturated solutions. Let's look at the process of giving birth in a different way. What if our task is to dry out the substance of our earthly vehicle so that it's no longer soaked and waterlogged by the desires of the emotional realm? So how do you dry out a waterlogged personality? Well, two things first. First is to turn off the water, is to not keep soaking ourselves in water. That means not becoming attached to our desires, not becoming attached to anything, as the Buddha said, but also then by warming ourselves and drying ourselves through the fire of the higher mind that suddenly sees that being waterlogged means that we can't catch fire. Because our desire is to ignite the fire of love. How can we ignite the fire of love if we're waterlogged? So two things help. One is the fire of the higher mind that dries us out, and the other is the wind of Buddhi, which is the intuitive plane, the air of intuition. So the intuitive plane is corresponding to the air. So with the higher mind, the fire of the higher mind, and the winds of Buddhi, we can dry ourselves out. And I believe the task is to become tinder dry so that we are spiritually combustible. So by attaining this inner state of readiness, the conditions are conducive for the ignition of the fire of love in the cave of the heart. We can catch fire. I'm not talking about spontaneous combustion where we're going to disappear as a pile of ash, but there is a point where we no longer are waterlogged, where we are spiritually combustible. And just a couple more thoughts around this. We're told that the most suitable or apposite hearth to hold this divine conflagration is an open and loving heart. So the fire needs a fireplace, and the fireplace is a loving heart. And when our heart is in resonance with the heart of the planetary life, we can become part of the birth of a greater light of love, which is what is seeking to happen right now. I know I can sometimes sound very prosaic and it sounds very lofty, but for me, it is poetry. What we're being invited to do is to be artists, to actually create the conditions and to give birth to something that is magnificent. So when this heart-to-heart communion happens, the incandescent splendor of our inner child begins to grow and glow inside our atomic heart. This is the heart of our sovereign self. I referred to this before, but I want to say it again. This lighted presence, which is the child, the offspring of the divine feminine and divine masculine, is also referred to in the Ageless Wisdom teachings as Christ consciousness or the Christ presence. Once again, I need to say that this term predates Christianity. It is not referring to the being that we know as Jesus, the Christed One. Christ consciousness is the light of the world that happens when the divine feminine and divine masculine are born inside a human being, born inside a consciousness. So for me, Christ consciousness really describes the golden fruit that's born out of the sacred union of the divine marriage. So our task is to bring this fact alive, once again, to make the word flesh, so that it sings and soars and shines inside us. And as we experienced in the meditation, the birth of the light of our sovereign self requires the electric fire of the Father to quicken and magnetize the seed. It requires the unconditional love and embrace of the mother to nurture and hold the seed in the field of her body, so that our whole being becomes nourished. So we become pregnant with life. So we could say that the light of this Christ consciousness cannot be born until the divine masculine and divine feminine aspects of ourselves are in holy communion with each other, sacred union, until there is right resonant relationship between the two poles of the cosmic magnet. So when I talk about the birth of the inner child of light, this is what I'm talking about, is the birth of the light that has always been the promise inside of us. The conditions weren't right. The wood was wet. So let's sort of just bring this back into a time of reflection. So we've used this term fractals, or sacred fractals of the one life. That means that you and I carry within us the whole universal promise, and it's our task to play out this drama of creation inside the alchemical container of daily life. That's quite an assignment. And the revelation and the release of this light is the atomic light, that is the atomic light of love, which is Christ consciousness. And this takes place at all levels on a scalar continuum from the cosmic to the human. So for me, it's all part of how the one goes through this meta process of realizing itself. Now, this is so far beyond our current ability to know, it's not worth trying to fathom it with the mind. It's good to remain a mystery, because a mystery is something that needs to be revealed. So these may sound like very lofty concepts that I've placed into the field, and they may sound far removed from the challenges of your everyday existence. But yet I believe our personal struggles every day, our heartfelt strivings, are the very labor pains that actually stretch and pull us towards the appointed time and place of this great birth. So when the portal of birth, which is fashioned through the divine marriage, is fully opened, that on a microcosmic level, we actually experience and glimpse firsthand the vastness and grandeur of the generative mystery of the being in whom we live and move and have our being. So I talked about the mystery. We're told that we are living in an age of the revelation of the ancient mysteries. We are living in apocalyptic times. Now let me clarify this, because the Greek origin for the word apocalypse means to uncover, to reveal, to lay bare. Therefore, in the true meaning of the word, we are living inside the apocalypse, a time when things are revealed, when the old veiling forms are released and fall away. And we are actually witnessing the destruction of temporal and temporary forms. And yet what is really happening at the deepest level is the emergence and the appearance inside of us of the eternal promise of the fire of love, which we've just called the radiance of a Christed consciousness, the birth of the inner child. So this is nothing that we're going to take from outside. This is ours. We're giving birth to our inner child of light, which is part of the greater child of light. Remember, having pervaded the universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. So why this strong emphasis now on birthing the inner child of light? It's really connected with the destiny of the earth as a sentient being and with the role of humanity as a bringer of light. We're here to lead us from darkness into light. And as mentioned in previous broadcasts, the earth has a particular aspect of truth to reveal. Let's approach this by revisiting both the astrological and astronomical symbol of the earth, which is a circle with a cross inside. And this represents the light of spirit buried deep in the dense body of earth. It is literally crucified. The light is placed in the cruciform of earth. It's encased in a fourfold cross of matter. And it's said that the destiny and mystery of our planet is to show that the light of spirit, no matter how deeply it's buried in the dark, will always break free and shine. It will always resurrect. It will always rise from its temporary crucified state into the light of day. And if you want to go back to the Bible story, this is really the story that's told of the crucifixion and the resurrection. And I would recommend, if you wish, to read Alice Bailey's book that she wrote, From Bethlehem to Calvary. It's one of the books she wrote herself. And it talks about the life of the Master Jesus, who became the Christed one, Jesus the Christ, and shows how each stage of that life is a representation of the stages of growth that we go through to give birth to this light. So the Western mystery tradition illustrates this release and resurrection of the light as the symbol of a rose growing at the center of the cross. So the rose represents the incarnated soul. And when the flowering of the rose on the cross happens, it celebrates the release of light. It's the birth of the inner child of light. So the resurrection is the reappearance of the Christed light in matter. So this is another example of the divine marriage of the two poles of spirit and matter as they merge to generate their progeny, their child of a new and enlightened consciousness. So here's what I sort of thought about for myself. If a pre-existing limitless love lives at the heart of every atom of substance, lives at the heart of each one of us, then each particle of creation contains the eternal flame of this limitless love. Goes back again to the fact that having pervaded the universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. And the realization that we carry within us the divine flame is we used to say mind-boggling. For me, it's heartwarming, heart-enlightening. So let's take a few moments to breathe in and to digest this, allowing it to come alive inside. So let me begin to wrap this up by answering the question, why are these such urgent times in human history? The tremendous upheavals we're experiencing is because humanity, for the first time in its evolution, is facing a collective choice point. It's coming face to face with the consequences of its prior choices. And the Ageless Wisdom teaching says that humanity is facing the first initiation in which it can break free from the imprisoning pull of matter to show that we cannot live by bread alone. And we're witnessing this tug of war between these forces of spirit and matter. And it's said that the key to moving through this initiation, to passing this test, to detaching from the attachment to form, it happens when the presence of a greater love is born within the cave of the heart. That's why we're exploring this theme today, the birth of the inner child of light. The light of a greater love is seeking to be revealed through the birth of the inner child. So this is not an intellectual exploration. This is something that we're being invited to do now because we've reached that destined point in our human history where it's make or break. And we, as this fractal, we are the portal through which this light can be revealed on earth. And understanding and accepting the enormity of this proposition may take time, and yet in the end, the inner child for whom we are responsible can only be born through our individual lives working together in harmony inside a collective field of loving kindness, inside a humanity which is united. So during the course of our journey today, I've emphasized and probably re-emphasized the fractal nature of our individual lives. This repetition was deliberate and was intended to serve as a stimulus and a digestive aid. It's a way of reminding ourselves that God lives in us and we live in God. God lives as us and we are invited to live as God inside the microcosm of creation that is the planet Earth. However, we need to keep this in right perspective with humility. And the Master DK describes The Master DK talks about humility as an adjusted sense of right proportion. So what does it mean to be humble? It means that we don't aggrandize or diminish ourselves, but we learn to stand in the sweet spot of our own sovereignty, which, of course, as we've just said, is an integral aspect of the limitless nature of the one life. So I want to close by sharing a conversation from 1982 that stayed with me ever since. I was speaking at a conference in Toronto, and one of the other presenters was Ram Dass. And one evening we decided to go out for ice cream. And during the course of the next few hours, many stories were exchanged, but the one that had the greatest impact on me was when he described how a good friend of his had spent long periods of his life inside mental health institutions because of a conviction that he was the Christ. Whereas Ram Dass said that he could roam free upon the earth because he recognized that he was a Christ. Big difference between the and a. So I invite us to bring our journey to a close by affirming that a child of light, a Christ itself, lives at the heart of our beingness, and that you and I as sacred fractals, are particles of God. And as particles of one, we have a particular task on earth, which is to unfold and reveal the enfolded promise of the inner child of light. So may we stand together in expectant joy. May we draw upon the strength, loving wisdom, and fiery daring of the soul to reveal and deliver on the promise of light that we each carry. May this presence be born within the cave of each human heart. May this light dispel the darkness. May it bring love and joy to our planet. May we be the bringers of light. Thank you. I know we've had a couple of technical hitches and glitches along the way, but nothing on the outside can stop the inner process that's taking place inside of you and I, which is the birth of this child of light. So thank you very much for your presence and your participation. And on behalf of everyone here at Meditation Mount, I bid you good night and farewell, and we'll see each other again next month as we continue to inquire the way together. Thank you. Namaste.